We're going to dig into In Cold Blood tonight. We can't get downstairs to our dining room, our studio there. Hi, Tom Hergert, Karen Smith. Hi there, darling Alex Gordon, Mark Gladstone, Tom Iapolo, Catherine Capel, Karen Smith, Joan Denny, Ralph Rice. Nice to see. Hi there, SR, Diana Lynch, back from the wedding. Dick L, Jeff, Rhonda. Nice to be with you. So, Marianne, good to see you. I had not appreciated David Faust. I had not appreciated Hi there, Lenore Hickory, until we reopened In Cold Blood. Um, the degree to which Truman Capote made a point of trying to portray Hi there, Mr. Dickens, Hi there, Klaatu, um, in which this horrible murder of the Clutter family had also affected the people who investigated it. He centers on Agent Alvin Dewey. Dick Hickok and Perry Smith are on the lam, coming back from Mexico, where they've been selling stolen merchandise and committing more crimes. Nothing is spectacular, petty crimes. I might refer to some of what they did as a petty crime. Obviously, the Clutter's capital crime and a sin. And Capote butts these two vignettes up against each other. We left off last night with Alvin Dewey's wife asking, will we ever, because the phone's ringing off the hook at all hours. People are calling to confess, obviously drunk or otherwise fabricated confessions, which is a whole, either Lee Miller, which is a whole mentality in a terrible situation like this. So she said, will things ever get back together to normal or for a family? Dewey fitted a key into the front door of the Clutter house inside. Hi there, Marvel Faulkner. Inside, the house was warm, for the heat had not been turned off, and the shiny floored room, smelling of lemon-scented polish, seemed only temporarily untenanted. It was as though today were Sunday and the family might at any moment return from church. The heirs, Mrs. English and Mrs. Jarko, had removed a vanload of clothing and furniture, yet the atmosphere of the house, still humanly inhabited, had not thereby been diminished. In the parlor, a sheet of music coming through the rise stood open on the piano rack. In the hall, a sweat-stained gray Stetson hat, Herb Clutter, hung on a hat peg. Upstairs in Kenyon was the son, Kenyon's room, on a shelf above his bed, the lenses of the dead boy's spectacles gleamed with reflected light. The detective moved from room to room. He toured the house many times. Indeed, he went out there almost every day, and in one sense could be said to find these visits almost pleasurable, for the place, unlike his own home or the sheriff's office, with its hullabaloo, was peaceful. The telephones, with their wires still severed, were silent. The great quiet of the prairies surrounded him. He could sit in Herb's parlor rocking chair and rock and think. A few of his conclusions were unshakable. He believed that the death of Herb Clutter had been the criminal's main objective, the motive being a psychopathic hatred, or possibly a combination of hatred and thievery. And he believed that the commission of the murders had been leisurely labor, with perhaps 2 or more hours between the entrance of the killers and their exit. The coroner, Dr. Robert Fenton, reported an appreciable difference in the body temperatures of the victims. And on that basis, theorized the order of execution had been Mrs. Clutter, Nancy, Kenyon, and finally Mr. Clutter. Attendant upon these beliefs was his conviction that the family must have known the persons who destroyed them. I will point out about 75% of this obviously turns out to be different. During this visit, Dewey paused at an upstairs window, his attention caught by something seen in the near distance. The scarecrow amid the wheat stubble. The scarecrow wore a man's hunting cap and a dress of weather-faded, flowered calico. Surely an old dress of Bonnie Clutter's. Wind frolicked the skirt and made the scarecrow sway, made it seem a creature forlornly dancing in the cold December field. And Dewey was somehow reminded of Marie's dream, his wife. One recent morning she had served him a bundled breakfast of sugared eggs and salted coffee. Blamed it all on the silly dream, but a dream the power of daylight had not dispersed. "So real, Alvin," she said, "as real as this kitchen. That's where I was, here in this kitchen. I was cooking supper, and suddenly Bonnie Clutter walked through the door. She was wearing a blue Angora sweater, and she looked so sweet and pretty, and I said, 'Oh, Bonnie, Bonnie, dear, I haven't seen you since the terrible thing happened.' But she didn't answer, only looked at me in that shy way of hers, and I didn't know how to go on under the circumstances. So I said, 'Honey, come see what I'm making Alvin for his supper, a pot of gumbo with shrimp and fresh crabs. It's just about ready. Come on, honey, have a taste.' But she wouldn't. She stayed by the door looking at me, and then I don't know how to tell you exactly, but she shut her eyes, she began to shake her head very slowly and wring her hands very slowly, and to whimper or to whisper. I couldn't understand what she was saying, but it broke my heart. I never felt so sorry for anyone, and I hugged her. I said, 'Please, Bonnie. Oh, darling, don't. If ever anyone was prepared to go to God, Bonnie, it was you.' But I couldn't comfort her. She shook her head and wrung her hands, and then I heard what she was saying. She was saying, 'To be murdered. To be murdered. No, no. There's nothing worse. Nothing worse than that. Nothing.' Then Capote goes to this scene. It was midday deep in the Mojave Desert. Perry, sitting on a straw suitcase, was playing a harmonica. Dick was standing at the side of a black-surfaced highway, Route 66, his eyes fixed upon the immaculate emptiness as though the fervor of his gaze could force motorists to materialize. Few did, and none of those stopped for the hitchhikers. One truck driver bound for Needles, California, had offered a lift, but Dick had declined. This was not the sort of setup that he and Perry wanted. They were waiting for some solitary traveler in a decent car and with money in his billfold. A stranger to rob, strangle, and discard in the desert. In the desert, sound often precedes sight. It heard the dim vibrations of an oncoming, not yet visible car. Perry heard it too. He put the harmonica in his pocket. He picked up the straw suitcase. This, their only luggage, bulged and sagged with the weight of Perry's souvenirs. Plus 3 shirts, 5 pairs of white socks, box of aspirin, a bottle of tequila, scissors, a safety razor. and a fingernail file. All their other belongings had either been pawned or been left with the Mexican bartender or been shipped to Las Vegas. And joined Dick at the side of the road. They watched. Now the car appeared and grew until it became a blue Dodge sedan with a single passenger. A bald, skinny man. Perfect. Dick raised his hand and waved. The Dodge slowed down, and Dick gave the man a sumptuous smile. The car almost, but not quite, came to a stop, and the driver leaned out the window, looking them up and down. The impression they made was evidently alarming. After a 50-hour bus ride from Mexico City to Barstow, California, and half a day of trekking across the Mojave, both hikers were bearded, stark, dusty figures. Carr leaped forward and sped on. Dick cupped his hands around his mouth and called out, "You're a lucky bastard!" Then he laughed and hoisted the suitcase to his shoulder. Nothing could really get him angry because, as he later recalled, he was too glad to be back in the good old USA. Anyway, another man in another car would come along. Harry produced his harmonica, his since yesterday, when he stole it from a Barstow variety store, and played the opening bars of what had come to be their marching music. The song was one of Perry's favorites, and he had taught Dick all 5 stanzas. In step, and side by side, they swung along the highway singing, "Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. Is trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored." Through the silence of the desert, their hard young voices rang, "Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah." Wow. And Capote makes you aware of that, Rhonda, doesn't he? Someone who might even know years later that he was nearly a character in the story. But he is a character in the story, put together in Capote's book. Boy, this is so powerful. And a real example of the art of reportage, Truman Capote style, and prose. So, thanks very much for being with us on our open book tonight. I think we will pick this up tomorrow. Eraser your place for visiting Chicago. I hope you're having a wonderful time. The weather's a problem, isn't it? Oh boy, David, I think that's a very good reaction. Yeah, I think that's a very good reaction. So thanks very much for being with us on our open book. I'm writing something on Lenny Bruce. Got to get back to that. And we hope to see you downstairs from our production facility soon. It's very good to be with everybody. Yeah, that's what I understand. Take care. Bye-bye.